welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Money with Friends. Every Wednesday, we have the privilege to come to you to really talk about money, life, and everything else. We say on this show that money encompasses everything. And for me, conversations about everything is important because, so tonight is a really hot day in Boston. I don't know where you are, but it's extremely hot in Boston. And I know we've had difficulties getting folks to come on the show on time. But you know what? I'm all about practice. So tonight's topic is your practice. Basically, practice matters. The way you practice your life, the way you run your life, the way you do things every single day in your life really matters. So tonight we're gonna have this discussion and we're gonna talk about, what is your practice? What is practice? What is your practice? And what does it matter? So I had posted something earlier online saying that, most individuals usually say to themselves, I'm a kind person. I strive to be kind until somebody challenges your kindness. And then all of a sudden the real person shows up. And it's the same way with a corporation or institutions. They, pride themselves as being really good corporate citizens, meaning good neighbors, meaning like good corporations to either work for or do business with. And yet, sometimes when the financial bottom lines, the money gets funny, all of a sudden they start compromising and start deviating from their practices. So tonight we want to talk about why is it important to understand your practice, what can help you continue to practice the right things every single day, and also if you see yourself in a situation where you've deviated too far, what can you do to bring yourself back? Everybody who's been watching the show right now knows that I am a believer and I love to quote the Bible. Now, you don't have to be a Bible scholar or Bible believer to understand this very simple scripture that it's from Romans 7:19, that talks about like, I delight in the law of God, meaning like I want to do what God wants me to do. However, there's another law. There are other things pulling me, constantly raging against the law that is on my mind. Because again, what you want to do, you are doing the opposite. That's why tonight we say, what do you practice? Do you practice what you preach? Because practice matters. So without further ado, we do have a friend who's on. This lady's been on actually she came on a while back. And I've been talking to her on and off saying like, you gotta come back, Magali. And so she's back again today. And we're gonna have this in-depth discussion. Like I said, it's a very hot day in Boston and we're gonna do our very best. We've been having some technical difficulties, but you know what? I always practice what I preach. I promise to be here on a Wednesday at 7 o'clock. And I'm here on Wednesday at 7 o'clock, maybe a little bit off in the time, but we are here. So without further ado, Magali, can we say hello? I know you are using something else. What I'm gonna do is try to change your name on the screen and also, give you an opportunity to introduce yourself as we dive into this conversation.
Hi, everyone. This is Maggie Penny, and I'm happy to be back on the show. It's been many months since we last had a conversation on an interesting topic. Tonight is no different.
Yeah.
Well, actually, it is different because it's hot.
I know. It's hot in Boston. How have you been feeling?
I am feeling it. It is hot. But I'm glad to be here and with your audience as well. And thank you for joining us tonight. And hopefully we will all be able to get something out of this that we can use moving forward.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, practice is an important part of life. Let me just premise by saying like, I've been meditating on the word practice all month long because I'm part of another organization and we've been talking about it. And I realized that because I've been very more like conscientious about the word practice and how I do my activities every single day, or how I react to different things, I'm doing a lot better. Because when you actually more conscientious, you can do a lot better at things, right? So that's why I was like, you know what, we need to have this conversation on the show, because on this show we say money encompasses everything. So many times you find yourself with a business or part of a corporation, and things are not going so well because of your practice, or because of their practices, or the way they're running things. So why don't we go first and foremost, start with a conversation as is, how do you define practice, and what is practice?
Practice is something that can be done in action. It is something that you can receive, something that you can give, something that allows you to reach proficiency and beyond. Mastery is something that can oftentimes be the result of practice. Practice isn't something that is always welcome, but in many times necessary if you are looking to learn and grow, as well as improve. Can't improve without practice. Practice as a noun is a place that you go to. Perhaps it's where your profession or your area of expertise is located in, for the most part, and that is where you not only hone your particular skill set or talent, gifts, knowledge, vocation. It can be where you can share that with others as well in your practice, like such as a medical practice, such as a consulting practice, a legal practice. It's something that we've all done at one point or another, and sometimes it's been embraced and sometimes we are reluctant, but I don't know anyone who hasn't practiced.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know anyone who's not practicing, because every single, the definition I had been, thinking about is the act of doing something. The act of doing something. So we all are doing something, whether it is you waking up to cook breakfast for your kids, that's a practice, or whether it is you getting up to get them ready for school, that's a practice, them getting ready or doing their homework every single day, that's a practice. Whatever you're doing is a practice. Now, of course, when we think of practice, I know, just like you say, in terms of professional, right? In the professional realm, it's like, oh, I have a law practice, or you practice in law there, or have a medical practice, like you said, right? But at the end of the day, we all doing a practice. That's why every single day, I love the fact that you mentioned that we get better at it as we do it. But can we also get worse at something that we practice in terms of, like, for example, if somebody's grumpy, I had stated here, you practice every day, even watching our program like this, right? There are some people who practice being critical, right? And every single time they see something, their very first reaction is criticism, whereas some people, their very first reaction is being receptive. Can you talk a little bit about that? That's what practice.
One thing that comes to my mind right away is two words: social media.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone who has used multiple social media platforms or a particular one has practiced it in a positive way or in a negative way. It's a blessing and it's a curse. I remember when we had the earthquake in 2012, 2013 in Haiti. Social media allowed me to find out how my relatives were doing there. We were able to communicate. Anything that was communicated was of a positive or, a matter of fact type update that was beneficial, especially as more details came about, and we were able to be better informed, what was going to happen. Then you have politics. Most of the time, from what I've observed and unfortunately participated in at times, social media, when it comes to politics, it's that knee-jerk negativity that that we practice being, judge, executioner, and jury behind our keyboards. Whereas we might not necessarily do that face to face, online. So practice and preach. It's not
what we preach
on social media as it is to do offline, but it's challenging regardless.
It's challenging because, as you were saying, as you were talking, I was thinking about the fact that sometimes our practice could be very conscientious. Like I said, like I've made a concerted effort to really be very strategic, methodical, and being responsible about how I'm practicing every single day. How do I react? I remember someone invited me to a party, and my first reaction was, no, I'm not going because this person has not been there for me, right? And then immediately, because I've been meditating on the word practice, what do I want to practice? Am I practicing what I preach? If I say I love, I'm willing to love at all times, love never fails, how am I practicing in this very moment? So can you talk a little bit about the idea of being conscientious and not being conscientious when we're practicing? Because many times folks are not even realizing that they're practicing being judgmental, or they're practicing being mean, or they're practicing something, or even you go to a business, they're practicing bad customer service, and they're not even aware of it. Because is it because of how people were raised, or their nature or nurture? Yeah. Can you explain that a little bit?
Practice oftentimes involves repetition.
Yeah.
In order to be better, practice, you have to be taught. You have to come from a foundation. And the best sorts of interactions, whether it be to customers, between clients, professionally, personally, is taught first. You're taught, there's a foundation. And even though we all fall short, spiritually speaking, the more we've been able to tap into what we've been taught for whatever it is, that skill, talent, communication that we're being conscientious about, there's training involved first. And sometimes that involves trial and error, independent of other people or another person actually going in and teaching you or training you how to execute that particular skill set, talent. But the best people who do their practice have learned and have been taught and are willing to teach and are willing to learn. So it's ongoing. It's a circular thing. If you're ever going to, unconsciously or consciously be aware of what you're practicing, you have to be open to not only teaching, but receiving the teaching, to learning it.
Yeah, you gotta be learning. You gotta be learning, because it's very scary when you find yourself amongst people who are saying like, I already know enough. And you're like, really? You already know enough? It has to be ongoing, because I think we all read the book, by Michelle Obama, Becoming Michelle. Like every single day we are becoming. Every time you go to sleep, you wake up, you're a different person. So if you're not feeding yourself something new every day, so that you can practice. I'm not saying like, not everybody has time to read a book, or not everybody has time to even read an article. Like, I mean, like one of the reasons why I'm talking about this conversation is because of an article I shared it with you about practice, and how practice works every single day in our lives, right? So if you don't have the time to do that, you have to be in an environment where you're being fed something that can help you grow. Because if you're not practicing and you're not becoming every day, it's very dangerous, right? Because you become someone who is stagnant. You're not transforming, correct?
Yeah, there is a danger in, not being open to being taught, and not being open to learning. Um, I think so many of us can be perfectionists, and
Mm,
that tendency can sometimes block our blessing, our growth, our
correct.
knowledge, in particular areas. Um, but I also feel that, becoming better at listening,
Mm-hmm,
critique, uh,
mm-hmm,
you know, positive, constructive criticism,
mm-hmm.
um, it is easier to move through that kind of intentional teaching when it's, when there's no harm in being taught or learning something. It's when, there's mean,
Mm.
in where
Yeah, the intention. Yeah.
there's bullying, there's not a willing to hear what, is being communicated.
Yeah.
It's where we can really, suffer when it comes to practicing the wrong things, the
Yeah.
wrong, negative, counterproductive, um, habits of mind and affect.
Yeah.
Learned about these things in my, graduate school education, and you know, I feel like you're never too old or young to practice being better. I
Yeah.
don't know so much about becoming, and I'll have to admit, I am one of the people who never read the book.
Right.
I am
Yeah.
I don't have time to read certain books, at certain times. But, I feel like we are, and to be is a more appropriate term than actually becoming, because we
I mean,
exist. We're
so you're
here
saying that we should be in the moment.
where the movement occurs, when
Yeah.
you're being, you know, a professional, you're being a student, you're being, a leader, you're being, a
A
master.
supporter. You being someone who's a cheerleader. You being someone who can be a good friend. Because we've been talking about the idea of the practice, as in every single day you practicing being or become. I say becoming, but you say being somebody. And what are you becoming, or what are you being every single day? Because at the end of the day, if you call yourself a friend, are you actually a friend? And what does it look like for you? What makes you feel like you're a friend? And how do other people around you receive you as a friend? If you say someone, if you say that, I'm a company and this company values diversity. I know we had this conversation offline about the idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So if we were to talk about practicing in terms of organizations, they talk about that. To me, in many ways, it's more like window dressing, but they're really not practicing diversity, equity, and inclusion. What do you think about that? What do you see about that? So many companies who are claiming they have, even the diversity department, they might have like a token or two, but they're really not practicing it. The reason I'm talking about that too is because I just came from Boston, downtown Boston, and I was part of a seminar earlier today, and it was from agency it's the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, and they were talking about how they are constantly having to police organizations, especially banks, financial institutions, who are not practicing what they're claiming to be. Talk about that, please.
As a professional, I've encountered this tendency, to either, go with the trend, actually being intentional. I feel like when it comes to practicing, like DEI or diversity, equity, and inclusion, you have to practice it to become, because again, we all fall short and we're all human. And the people sometimes think that need to improve on these types of policies are sometimes the people that are actually on track, and the people that sometimes are, training in these are sometimes the same people who are not seeing where they're falling short, but I think the overarching thing is excellence. In my personal journey, what's more important than diversity and equity and inclusion is excellence. Excellence encompasses all of that. And if what you're striving for is excellence, oftentimes you are able to see what is actually needed for the policies to be productive and beneficial to multiple people and be truly diverse, therefore be actually equitable and intentionally inclusive. But excellence is the piece that people overlook. They think it's one, equity, or the other, excellence. And excellence is where you want to become an organization or an individual or a professional that, is able to, if you're striving for excellence, then you are less likely to be putting yourself into a box type situation where you're overlooking where you yourself need to be held accountable or make yourself accountable. For me, that's the most important thing.
I think it's very important. Excellence. I am reading this book this month called Here Forever, and it's an autobiography of this gentleman who actually used to be the CEO of Procter and Gamble. We all use their products, right? But one thing, when you say excellence, like his motto was, with all that I am. Every time that he would do something, he would put effort in doing something, he would say, with all that I am. With all that, meaning like, or he had at his highest, trying to do your very best, being excellent. So because as a CEO, they say even in the 1980s, before diversity, inclusion, or equity and inclusion became a thing, he was already practicing that, because he wanted to do everything with all that he was, with all that I am. And as I'm reading this book, I'm like, if you strive hard enough and you do everything that we can, if you practice what you preach and what you believe, you can do it with all that you have. And that's being a friend, and also that's being in our organization. The reason I'm saying that is because, we all seen it. We talked about Women's Month, Women History Month, and also Black History Month. Every single year, you see these companies that have historically been on the news, They're on the news for being, very unfair and unjust in their practices. Usually folks are suing, or the Attorney General's office are suing them because of unfair and deceptive practices. But on LinkedIn, during those months, Black History Month or MLK's birthday, or Women's History Month, all of a sudden they're happy. They want to wish everybody happy. So, I mean, like, why is it important, again, as we're talking about practice, by window dressing or doing it in such a way that's not excellent? How is it hurting us as a society? And also, how is it hurting the company because they're not striving for excellence?
It's compartmentalization.
Yep.
It's seasonal. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Let's, recognize that this season is coming up, so we're going to market, and we're going to, send out reminders. We're going to have events. We're going to coordinate. Oh, it's this particular month. It's, it has to be a daily thing.
All right.
Woven
Practice is a daily activity.
to the fabric of the foundation of your organization. And so it doesn't require a holiday. It doesn't require a special occasion. You want to be excellent. You don't pick and choose which days you're going to be excellent. It's a daily thing. And as you said, practice. You practice it.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the idea, compartmentalization, putting a, my little work life is over here, my personal life is over here, the way I treat my subordinates are over here, treat is over here, the way I treat me, perhaps the person, on top of me is different. When you compartmentalize your life, you're not somebody who's practicing authenticity. You're not someone who's practicing excellence, and you're not someone who's practicing what you perhaps, maybe you're not preaching anything, maybe you don't believe in anything. Because usually if you believe in something, especially if you've been taught something from infancy and you want to practice that in your life, you have to make a concerted effort not to compartmentalize your life and to be congruent, to be holistic. The reason, again, as I was reading this book, hearing about this man, his name was John Smale, Smale. The fact that they said, you know what, this man had a holistic life. You talk to his children, he was a man of integrity. You talk to his wife, he was a man of integrity. And you talk to his subordinates, he was a man of integrity. And the people were on top of him the same way. Because leadership is top down, right? It's coming. And the very fact that if you can live a comprehensive life, that's definitely the way to do it, because that's how you're practicing becoming better every day. And I love the fact that you talk about mastery. I know sometimes we try to, we are work in progress, right? Nobody's gonna master anything while you're living, right? You are a work in progress, correct?
We all slip and fall. The trick is to get back up and keep getting back up. It's that continuous effort that is an important part of practicing better, and reaching either proficiency or mastery and beyond.
Beyond.
I
Well,
said
you
this
can,
when we talked last year, there is no ceiling when
yeah,
it comes to this, but when you compartmentalize,
yeah,
and what's good for the goose isn't good for the gander, because you think
yeah.
you reached a certain level being what you are, instead
Mhm.
of being intentional about who you are
Who
holistic.
you are.
um
Yeah,
there's a difference.
it's
We
the difference.
wear 5 different hats in 5 different days, but am I that same person, or am I trying to become a better person
Yeah.
each day that I wear those respective hats? um and I feel like, you know that you have good and bad with everything.
Mhm.
And self-awareness is something that, as we mature and age, and have wisdom, we learn to be better at recognizing
Mhm.
when we fail. That actually is a practice that I've, tapped into.
Yeah.
um, Self-awareness,
Yeah.
because it develops so many different areas. Volunteering, which I do pretty heavily. My profession, where it relates to my family,
Mhm.
um, you know, events, and uh, projects
Yeah.
that you know uh, are being worked on. You
Yeah.
know, it's, it's you know I have to I should be able to, at this point in my life, look back. You know, it's and popular to uh, you know, contrary to popular belief, it's okay to have regrets.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And then you should showcase your regrets because that those are the ones that you learn the most. You should own them, and you learn so much from your mistakes because your mistakes will empower you to help somebody else so that they could perhaps avoid it. So, we talked about like this particular book as I was reading it, Here Forever. This man is saying, with all that I am, everything he did, I'm a husband with all that I am. I'm a father with all that I am. I am a CEO with all that I am. So he's striving for excellence. So for me, I'm always saying, I am so sure. And I'm so sure. When I say I'm so sure, I'm saying I'm so sure because I know I've given it everything that I've got. I've done the work. That's why I'm always saying I'm so sure. So yeah, can you share what do you practice and what are some of your things that you feel like you're so sure about on a daily basis?
um, I practice giving.
Yeah.
I am, and I'm giving time,
Mm-hmm.
mm, my talents,
Yeah.
my knowledge. I'm giving my love,
Correct.
my hate.
Speak up a little bit because I don't know if it's my AC, but it's a little hard for me to hear you. Yeah.
Um, so, you know, that's something that I do.
Mm-hmm.
Who I am. It's not
Uh-huh.
only what I do, but it's who I am. That's how I am. I am a giver.
Yeah.
I give my time. I give my, you know, energy. I give my, um, you know, funds. You
Uh-huh.
know, I give my expertise, knowledge. That is something that is every day.
Mm-hmm.
Every day, there's not been one day, whether I'm conscious of it or not, that I have given of myself in
Yeah.
some way, shape, or form, to a small extent or to a great extent.
Yeah. I think about the fact that every single day I try to practice love because at the end of the day, I have a great love for God. And how can you say you love God and not love your neighbors, right? Fairness. I'm always seeking for ways to be fair. Justice. Justice is very important to me. That's why I fight for it, for others. Kindness. I think, I always put on online saying like live, love, and laugh. Living life to its fullest. Being a good friend and being a good neighbor is very important to me because I think one of the things that I never really dawned on me, like the word practice was actually part of the verse. I had posted it. There's passage in the Bible that says, share with God's people who are in need, practice hospitality. Share with God's people who are in need, practice hospitality. So you being a giver, God's people who are in need are your neighbors who just need a smile, or your friends who are looking to, they need someone to babysit for them, or an organization that perhaps needs your expertise, right, to help them with a project. share, and you practice hospitality. And we think of hospitality as the hotel industry. No, hospitality is how kind you are to someone. How warm are you when somebody comes around? How do you treat people, or do you always quick to judge? I was at an event this weekend, and I was saying to someone, "Oh, this person, this is their profession," and I mentioned the profession, and the very first thing she said was, "Everybody's this and that," and I'm like, that's not practicing hospitality, because the first reaction was, I don't trust, I don't believe this person has the capability or capacity to be what you just mentioned. So it's very important when we practice judgment, we're not practicing hospitality, right? When we practice being, right, sexist or racist, or we practice any one of those isms that are out there, racism, sexism, I don't know, ageism, nationalism, you name it. You're not practicing hospitality. So for me, it's very important to practice what you preach. Would you agree?
I would.
Huh.
I feel like it's easier to do it when you're not confined to any ism.
Correct.
Globalism.
Yeah. Global. I know. If you're a citizen of the world, everybody's welcomed, right?
Yeah, they're all, the systems of the world will all fall away as such it is written.
Correct.
So, I feel like, sometimes those isms become our religion.
Mm-hmm.
Religions can cause more harm than good.
Correct.
Believer such as you, I believe in God, but I'm not a religious person. I came up and was reared religiously. But religious acts are typically from frail and faulty human beings.
Correct.
Faith, it goes much deeper than what man can drum up or
Yeah.
woman themselves.
Yeah.
Me, like something like feminism, I'm not a feminist, because to me, feminism is saying the opposite. There's a problem with the opposite, which would be something like chauvinism, and chauvinism isn't good either. That's like having a problem with feminism. It's like,
Well, I mean, I have a different take. Magali, because I've been doing some studies with a group of women, and we go in depth into different topics. And for me, the idea of being a feminism, actually, I did a show about that, saying feminism is for everybody, and to me, is being receptive and being loving to women who have been marginalized forever because of the patriarchal culture that we have. It's very important to acknowledge the fact that they have, just like we acknowledge the fact that Black and Brown and Indigenous people have been marginalized and oppressed. And when you say I stand with those folks and I want to include them, diversity, equity, and inclusion, you're not saying the groups or the segment of the population that have not experienced the same thing, something is wrong with them. You're just saying, like, I recognize that there is been historically an issue with this group, and I want to stand with them and I want to bring them along. So for me, I am a feminist because I believe feminism is for everybody. And feminism to me means treating men and women the same way. Going back to companies who are claiming to be upright corporate citizens, and yet, for example, my sister is an engineer. She was working with a company, I'm not gonna say the name of the company, but engineering is mostly men. And this woman went through hell and back because of that environment. Because the culture, we've talked about corporate culture, the corporate culture of that organization was so devious that she had to run for her life. Literally, and she wasn't the only one. She had another friend. By being a Black woman and also being a woman, two strikes against her, and it made it very difficult. So I felt like that organization, if they had had a concept of what feminism is, they would have done the work to be more conscientious. You cannot be unconscious about things like that. More conscientious to create an environment that would have been more conducive to making sure that this woman, my sister, is brilliant. She's been really brilliant and really great at math, like the STEM type of girls, very brilliant, really always been really great. Ever since she was like in grade school, she was doing calculus and physics and all that stuff. So because of that, engineering was a natural progression for her. But she had to leave that field because of the stress and the abuse. So that's why going back again, and I was talking to the CFPB, Consumer Finance Protection Bureau today, some of the agents, and they're saying that we are constantly having to police organizations who are not practicing what they're claiming they're claiming to be. They're not practicing it. They're saying like, all are welcome. You want to have a loan? I am a bank. If you qualify, you ought to get a loan. And yet, they'll come to a certain community, even with the CRM, the Community Reinvestment Act. They'll come to a community, they'll bring in all the deposit they want to bring in, meaning like they'll have people open checking accounts, but when it's time to loan them money, that's a different story. They're denying loans to Black and Brown and Indigenous communities. So they're constantly having to police them. Going back again, and I'll let you talk with the book that I'm reading. This man, John Smell, he's saying we won't need the police of the regulatory agencies if people had enough integrity, meaning corporate America and the corporate leaders had enough integrity and also understood the importance of being excellent. Like you say, forget even about diversity, inclusion, or equity. No, be excellent, right? Do what you're supposed to do. Treat everybody equally with respect. Practice.
I attended an all-women's college.
Mm-hmm.
I had my daughters in a STEM program
for
girls. And I've experienced prejudice and but to me, it's not about what I am, it's who I am.
Right.
As we were talking about earlier, those things fall away, the what's. It's about, at the end of the day, or at the beginning of the day, who are you? Not what are you? So when I say I'm not a feminist or a womanist or a chauvinist or a capitalist or a national.
Individualist. I'm an individualist.
Who I am when I rise and who I am when I come back down.
Amen. Yeah.
It allows you to, it innately allows you to knock down those barriers that the isms actually create.
Correct. I love the fact that this man's famous saying was, with all that I am, with all that I am. And I always say to myself and to everyone, I am so sure. I am so sure that I've done everything in my power to do the right thing. Now, have I fallen short? Many people would say that, but I have done everything in my power to do the right thing, either as a friend or as a community member. So with that being said, the last question is, if you find yourself deviating from everything that you are so sure, that you want to be so sure about, even in the book, this gentleman was saying like, I've made mistakes, like we talked about the mistakes. What can someone do? And that's the last question. What can you do if you find yourself saying like, every time I react to somebody, in a judgmental way, my inner spirit is telling me it's wrong, but I find myself doing it over and over again. What can somebody do? Or a company? I really want to be a welcoming place for everybody. I really want to practice what we preach, but we are falling short over and over again. What are some of the ways, tangible ways, we can become better?
Well, you can stop, review, consult, have honest discussions.
Correct.
And and take that information, and use it to become more intentional about improving
Yeah.
at an organization or an individual or a person. So I feel like we have to do this regularly. We have to kind of stop and think, review on regular basis that, we're
Yeah.
not, as you said earlier, stagnant. Looking at what we're doing as a group or as individuals, being self-aware, in who you are,
Yeah.
not necessarily incorporating elements of what you are, but
Yeah.
am I?
Yeah.
And
Stag-
why?
yeah.
Why
Yeah.
am I acting this way? Or, you know, why wasn't I aware until I was made aware that I am this way?
Mhm.
Mhm.
Stagnation is definitely a killer. If you find yourself being the same person that you were 10 years ago, or you even were last night, you are not growing and you're not becoming better and you're not practicing being. So it's very important that you do, like you say, the self-assessment, evaluation, having friends, having people around you are honest enough to say, let me offer you what we refer to as a grounded assessment so that they can say, I noticed this. Actually, like I said, I was going through a situation and a neighbor of mine said, can I offer you a grounded assessment? And it was based on based on the fact that I'm a believer, based on what you say you believe you are, how you acting or are you reacting to the situation accordingly. So you have to have people around you who can give you grounded assessment. If not, you are not becoming or you're not being. So it's very important that we do that. So I know when I spoke to you earlier today, Magali, you said that you had a couple of things that you would like to share. And I would like to give you an opportunity to share that. But yeah, I'll give you the last word again. I wanted to do this show today because we say money encompasses everything. And every time we're not practicing what we preach or what we believe in, whether it's a person or a corporation, you are losing money because many times folks don't want to associate with you or offer you opportunities because they know you're a Debbie Downer and you are constantly going to create mayhem in the environment and they don't want to be part of that. There's sometimes even a good time. I know for me, I'm always being called, you want to come out? Why? Because when you're a good timer and you like enjoy people and you make people feel great, they want to be around you. If you find yourself at home and nobody's calling your number to say come out to enjoy, it's because you haven't been a good friend. What can you do to become a good friend? And vice versa with the same way with a company. Turnovers, high turnovers, people are leaving like it's a plague at your office. What's going on? Really do an assessment.